also required to report to the COMELEC on how much tally fee they received.
Kailangan nating i-hold accountable magkano nga din ba ang binabayad natin dito sa mga meme pages, influencers na they participate in what I call the meme wars.
Marami kasi mga trolls no? Yung apparently, yung talagang there are individuals who are paid for that purpose. Medyo mahirap lang na, no? Pero if there are evidence talaga to show na they are hired, yung service nila for purposes of yung ma-highlight yung kanilang candidacy, yun, ang expense nun, may add doon against that candidate, and kung mag-overspend siya, makakasuhan natin.
Studies say Filipinos spend more than 4 hours online every day on social media, with Facebook being the most used platform and TikTok ranking 4th on the list. Social media is not only the primary source of news for many internet users, it has also hugely influenced the outcome of the elections. How can the digital platforms be safer and more accurate sources of information? We discuss in this episode of The Chiefs. We will be joined by our guests and the other chiefs when we return. Welcome to this weekend edition of The Chiefs. I'm Ed Lingao. Also with us, Ana Marie Paminton, the Philippine Star, and Lucy Cruz Valdez, the head of News 5. Ladies, happy weekend.
Happy weekend.
Happy Friday.
Thank Friday. God. Now, before we close the week, Ami, anong malaking star ninyo sa Philippine Star?
Well, humihingi ng tulong ang Commission on Elections kung meron daw kayong alam sa vote buying kasi inumpisahan na nila investigation. Initially, 12 cases. Although sabi ng PPCRB sa kanila naman daw So far, wala naman silang nakikitang major discrepancies sa election return sa yung bilang nila.
Tsaka napakahirap patunayan ng vote buying eh. And you only get
talaga
the small fry eh.
Although, yung isang kaso, hindi ba, meron yatang yung mga camera phone ngayon, may mga nakunan yata nag-aabutan. Mahirap nga siya.
Pero hindi mo nga rin alam kung mga staged yun. I mean, di ba? Ang hirap patunayan ng mga ganyan.
May guidelines na in-issue yung di ba, Bangko Sentral and the Anti-Money Laundering Council. Mga detalyado yon sa mga financial institutions para sa mga certain activities na that might indicate vote buying. Tingnan natin kung anong kalabasan.
Yeah, but that's really circumstantial kasi just because you withdrew a lot of cash doesn't mean that you bought votes. It could also mean that you have...
Kapag hindi daw yun yung usual activity nung account holder.
Mana mo kung marami kang inaanak na nag-birthday sabay-sabay. Anong alam ng BSP doon, di ba?
Ayan, wala ako doon. Lagay mo na ako sa listahan mo ba? Ganyan pala.
Diba?
Mga AMLAC level ka pala.
Sabay, AMLAC level, di ba? Tinaguan ko na kasi sila ng Pasko eh. Wala na ako lusot ngayong eleksyon kasi tumatakbo ako. Anyway, well, we will talk later about how TikTok was a campaign battlefield in 2022 with their head of public policy. But for now, joining us is Attorney Enrico Buco de la Cruz, a senior partner of Divina Law Office. And of course, we want to talk about the legal aspects, legal issues, especially the petitions before the Supreme Court. Attorney de la Cruz, thank you for joining us and welcome back to the Chiefs.
Good evening.
Hello, Attorney Buco.
Good evening, Attorney.
Good evening,
sir.
Mami, Ma'am Lucy, and Sir Ed.
Yes, sir. Sir, well, unang-una, we already know that the Supreme Court gave the respondents, meaning BBM and the COMELEC, 15 days in order to respond. So, binilang ko hanggang June 3 yon, thereabouts, to respond. Yet, the Board of Canvassers or Congress is going to start canvassing on Tuesday and the target to finish by Thursday. In other words, moot and academic na ang TRO. Was that
correct.
Was that procedural or was that deliberate? I mean, how should we view that? Was that a procedural thing or was it just circumstantial?
I think what is newsworthy is not the it's not the order to comment. No, kasi procedural yun eh.
Yeah.
Ang newsworthy ay yung hindi naglabas ng TRO. Kasi sa ilalim ng rules ng COMELEC, the decision of the COMELEC and bank in election cases become final after 5 days from the time it is promulgated, unless the petitioner secures a TRO from the Supreme Court. So since hindi nakakuha ng TRO yung petitioners, magtutuloy-tuloy yung canvassing on May 23, and according to Congress, by May 27, tapos na sila, mapoproclaim na si presumptive President Marcos. And the petition becomes moot because once he is proclaimed, the jurisdiction is transferred to the Presidential Electoral Tribunal, and there is no case filed in that tribunal.
Well, kaya nga, ang tanong nga is bakit naglabas pa ng order ang Supreme Court while they're on a writing break, ha? Parang kumbaga, they could have just, I don't know, let it pass, right? So the fact na humingi pa sila ng reply, isn't that significant in itself?
Hindi eh. Kasi Ma'am Lucy, nasa rules ng Supreme Court na if they are on a break, the Chief Justice has the authority to act on the prayer for TRO.
Okay.
And must require the respondent to file an answer or a comment on the petition. So nagko-comply lang sila dun sa rules nila. Dahil hindi pa naman napo-proclaim si former Senator Marcos, so the case can still proceed, no? So talagang according to their rules, since may petition, may urgency, kailangan pasagutin yung respondent. So they're just complying with due process. Ang nakakagulat, hindi naglabas ng TRO. So ibig sabihin, alam naman ng Supreme Court na magka-canvassing, no? Alam naman nila na in the next week or so matatapos ang canvassing. So for all intents and purposes, hinayaan na lang talaga nila na mag-proceed yung canvassing.
Yes, sir.
So
sir,
hindi mo masabing equivalent yung paghingi nila ng response and the fact na hindi sila nag-issue ng TRO with, hindi na sila magbibigay ng TRO. In short, hindi naman talaga.
Hindi kasi ikumpara natin, Ma'am Lucy, dun sa 2016 case ni Grace Poe. Doon, yung COMELEC, kinansila yung COC ni Senator Grace Poe at hindi siya makakatakbo. Buburahin yung pangalan niya sa balota. And bank decision yon. Si Senator Grace Poe went to the Supreme Court and asked for a TRO, similar to what the petitioners did. No? Inakyat nila yung desisyon ng COMELEC, humingi sila ng TRO, na pansamantala, habang dinidinig ng Supreme Court yung usapin, baka pwedeng wag munang i-implement yung desisyon. At nagbigay ng TRO ang Supreme Court. Tapos pinag-comment yung COMELEC. Di ba?
Okay.
So, ganun yung procedure.
So,
At natapos yung eleksyon, tsaka lang nilabas yung desisyon. Di ba? So, ito, ang kakaibahan, hindi naglabas ng TRO. So, hindi natin mai-interpret na dahil pinag-comment, ibig sabihin na siniseryoso yung petisyon or may pag-asa pa na mailabas yung TRO. Kasi kung talagang gustong maglabas ng TRO, they could have done so within the 5-day period.
Sir, singit lang very quickly, sir. So what you're saying, Bale, is that pwede silang naglabas ng TRO kahit bago sila mag-utos ng 15-day deadline to file comment?
Correct. The rules of the Supreme Court allow it. The rules allow the Chief Justice to issue a TRO to be confirmed later by the majority of the Supreme Court or the division kung saan siya na-raffle, no? And itong president, marami na rin tayong president na naglalabas sila ng TRO kung gusto talaga nilang maglabas ng TRO. In this case, naintindihan naman natin kung bakit hindi naglabas ng TRO. Kasi yung hinihiling ng petitioners, medyo imposible eh. Hinihiling nila na pigilan ng Korte Suprema ang Kongreso sa pagka-canvas ng balota at pagpoproklama.
Jurisdiction.
Ito ay nasa exclusive jurisdiction ng Kongreso eh. So talagang medyo mahirap din yung hinihiling nila. Kaya understandable naman na hindi nag-issue ng TRO.
Ami.
Pero attorney, on the other hand, tuloy-tuloy pa rin yung kaso sa Supreme Court, di ba? It parang bonus lang yung TRO eh. Because we talked to one of the petitioners, si Attorney Theodore Te, sabi niya, cancellation yan, kung sakasakali na kahit ma-canvas na at ma-proclaim, pwede pa rin siyang ma-overturn because kapag nag-rule, kung sakasakali man, no, although medyo parang malabo ngayon, kung sakasakali nga masabi na cancelled, it's as if the candidacy never happened. So, pwede pa rin mag-rule doon yung Supreme Court. Yun ang sinasabi niya.
Well, I respect his opinion, pero I beg to differ. Unang-una, ito ay galing sa COMELEC. Importante yun, no? Importanteng usapin yun. Na ito ay nanggaling sa COMELEC. Ibig sabihin, kandidato pa lang si Senator Bongbong. Kaya nasa COMELEC yung kaso. Umakyat sa Supreme Court on a certiorari. Ibig sabihin, ang burden ng petitioner patunayan na mayroong grave abuse of discretion. Kapag naproklama na si Senator Bongbong, hindi na siya kandidato. Siya ay presidente na. At sa ilalim ng ating saligang batas, isang tribunal lang ang pwedeng magtanggal sa isang nakaupong presidente on a question of an election, no? Ang election contest. Yun ang Presidential Electoral Tribunal. So pag siya ay na-proclaim na, ang aking opinion, wala nang jurisdiction yung COMELEC at kung anumang kasong iniakyat sa Supreme Court na nanggaling sa COMELEC, wala na yon na marerender na itong moot. Hindi na maaaring maging dahilan para matanggal ang isang nakaupong presidente. Pwede yun sa ibang posisyon. Pwede yun sa lower position, senator, mayor, congressman, governor. Pero pag presidente at vice, meron kasing hiwalay na tribunal na itinalaga ang Constitution na may exclusive jurisdiction for all election contests.
Sir,
Which is the Supreme Court also, di ba? Yun yung
pero ibang
Presidential
entity,
Electoral Tribunal.
ibang entity kasi yon, Ma'am Ami. In fact, ibang sombrero. Ibang sombrero yon.
So they can still handle the case kung sakasakaling umakyat doon.
A new case
Ibang
has to be
petition.
filed. Yeah, a different petition. And sa Supreme Court, sa Presidential Electoral Tribunal, Ma'am Ami, ang election protest can only be filed by a losing candidate. So kung wala namang protesta, ang pwedeng i-file ng mga petitioners dito ay co-warranto. Pero they need to file a separate petition.
Co-warranto meaning void from the start?
Meaning Meaning
Hindi siya
kulang sa qualification.
Oo, kulang yung qualifications. So are you, so hindi naman ko-warranto itong petition, di ba?
Hindi, cancellation ng certificate of candidacy.
So
Para
are
lang
you
sa isang
saying,
kandidato.
so in your opinion, wala na to? Yun ba yun?
Kapag na-proclaim, wala na.
Okay. Which is...
Yeah, between now and the proclamation, pwede pa rin bang mag-TRO? Kahit sa ngayong araw, wala.
Pwede. Kasi yung 5-day period, yun ay para lang sa COMELEC. Rules ng COMELEC yun. No? Para sa kanila, ang decision nila nagiging final after 5 days from promulgation unless ma-TRO ng Supreme Court. Pero hindi naman bound nun ang Supreme Court. The Supreme Court can still issue a TRO between now and the proclamation.
Yes, anytime, di ba?
Pero highly unlikely because it is a constitutional duty ng Congress.
Pero sir,
so
kasi...
even before they file the responses, ganun ba yun?
Correct.
Pwede sila mag-TRO.
Theoretically,
So you don't have to wait out the 15-day.
yes.
period
Theoretically, the
of
Supreme
filing.
Court can issue the TRO anytime.
Anytime.
Theoretically.
Pero sir,
highly unlikely.
Yes sir, pero didn't the Supreme Court ask the respondents to file their comments on the TRO petition within 15 days? Doesn't that in effect tell
kaya
them
nga
na you have 15
Correct.
days before
That's
we...
a matter of due process.
Yes sir.
That's a matter of due process, asking the respondents to comment. Pero pagka na the act sought to be restrained has already been consummated, there is nothing to restrain anymore.
So
ang
you're saying,
pinipigilan-
okay. So between now and the 26th, which is what the Senate says, no, will likely be the day that he will be proclaimed, pwede pang mag-TRO ang Supreme Court. Yan ang
Correct.
sinasabi mo.
Theoretically.
Oh.
Theoretically, pwede
Okay.
pa, but highly unlikely.
Yes, sir. Kasi nga, sir, it goes back to that. Why would they have given them 15 days to comment on the TRO petition? If they in the end will decide to make a decision in the next 7 days. I don't know. We're not lawyers. I'm just raising that question kasi we're not lawyers, precisely because of that. Diba? Parang sir, tell me if I'm getting this right, ha? So in effect, the fact that the Supreme Court has not issued the TRO yet is already a decision, in a way, on the petition for a TRO.
Correct. Kasi alam naman nila kung kailan mangyayari yung act sought to be restrained. Alam naman nila kung kailan yung dapat nilang pigilan. It's the May 23 to 27, the canvassing. So the petitioner says, pigilan nyo yung canvassing. May 23 to 27, tapos 15 days yung binigay mo to comment. So alam mo nang matatapos yung 15 days, mauuna pang matapos yung act sought
Yes,
to
sir.
be restrained.
The proclamation. Yes, sir. So parang, I don't know if this is the right way of putting it, pero parang it was a decision that was released without calling it a decision.
That's putting it nicely.
Okay.
Okay, so kunyari nagpatuloy yon, so na-proclaim, tapos nag-oath taking, the case continues, it will live on even after he actually assumes office.
I think it will continue, but the Supreme Court will dismiss it for being moot and academic. Because as I said, once the candidate is proclaimed president, the jurisdiction is now vested with the Presidential Electoral Tribunal. So hindi na maaaring magamit na dahilan para matanggal sa pwesto ang isang nakaupong presidente yung petition to cancel COC.
No, but you're saying that it will have to be a separate petition and it will have to be a protest against the election results.
It can be a protest
So, iba
filed
yun,
by a
diba?
losing candidate or a co-warranto filed by any person.
So but this one nga, ito, wala na yan.
Ito, wala na ito.
Na yan.
Once ma-proclaim.
So yung grupo na itong mga petitioners, since they are not representing any particular candidate, kailangan ko warrant to.
Correct. They need to file a new petition.
Mga
Sir,
ganun kaya considering yung record ng ating Supreme Court, abutin kaya yan na 6 years?
Tsaka medyo mabigat kasi kailangan na nilang sabihin na mayroong lacking na qualification.
Yes. Hindi ba mas maganda yata na merong solid ruling on that? they ruled on the case of Grace po, no? Although medyo madali-dali yun, citizenship yun eh.
Dito kasi wala namang issue ng lack of qualification eh. Doon sa final nila sa COMELEC. I think ang main argument lang nila ay nagsinungaling siya.
Material,
Yung material
misrepresentation.
misrepresentation. Yeah.
Hindi ba medyo madali din patunayan yan if you're going to cite the, halimbawa, mga revenue laws or election laws? Madali lang naman yun.
Yeah, nagdesisyon na ang COMELEC at sinabi nilang walang pagsisinungaling.
Yes, sir. Sir, if you
Okay,
don't mind,
so
sir.
assuming lang nag-TRO, nyari lang. Ano mangyayari? Kung so
we have
assuming
to-
na bigla nag-TRO, what's the scenario? Is it so hindi matutuloy yung proclamation at will it be the winning vice president that will now become president?
Yeah, scenario
Scenario.
Scenario A is that scenario, no? Since walang mapoproklamang presidente, mapoproklama na ang vice presidente, and by June 30, mandatory kasi yun, Ma'am Lucy, no? Na by June 30, mababakante ang posisyon ng presidente at magkikick in yung matitrigger, yung rules on succession. Since no president has qualified, dahil pending pa yung petisyon, yung vice president will be acting president pursuant to the Constitution. Yun yung scenario A. Scenario B, hindi susundin ng Kongreso yung TRO dahil nasa Constitution na duty nila. No? So may utos, natigilan nyo yan, hindi susundin, so magkakaroon ng constitutional crisis. So most likely, mapoproklama pa rin.
Dahil equal branch, no? So, kumbaga, hindi dapat pakialaman ng Supreme Court yung proclamation na ginawa ng Congress. That's what you're saying.
Yes.
Or they have to proclaim, di ba, within the given time period, di ba?
Yes.
Which is 5 days after, yes. Okay. So, doon magkakaroon ng constitutional crisis. At
So
this
dalawa ang possible scenario, sundin o hindi sundin. Pag sinunod, walang proclamation ng presidente, pero merong vice, pag inabot ng June 30 yung kaso, which aabuti ng June 30 yun, kasi matagal ang proseso niyan sa Supreme Court, since walang nag-qualify na presidente, the vice president will assume the presidency. Or scenario B, hindi susundin. Pag
Sir,
hindi
Anong
sinunod,
mas likely? Total theoretical lang
mas
naman ang
likely, walang
pinag-usapan
i-issue na
natin.
TRO eh. Ang aking likelihood scenario, walang i-issue na TRO. Pero assuming, that's a big if, na merong TRO, I think hindi susundin ng Kongreso.
Sir, in scenario B, if it does get to scenario B, who has the final say? We've always
It
thought
will
the
be
Supreme Court always
Congress.
gets the final
Congress
say.
has the final say because Congress is the one canvassing. And under the Constitution, they shall.
Their
Nakalagay,
constitutional
they shall.
duty. Yeah.
They shall canvass and they shall proclaim the winning president. So I think that they would, even if the Supreme Court, in the unlikely scenario, would issue a TRO.
Nagsalita na nga yung mga senador, sabi nila, yun na nga, they are warning of a constitutional crisis. So mukhang itutuloy nila, whatever happens. It's their duty daw. Ang
And therefore-
nagwa-warning, both opposition and yung pro-administration senators. Pare-pareho sila.
What about that scenario that some people are floating that it's a Vice President Leni Robredo Pangaraw that could rightfully take the place of the position of president between now and the time that the proclamation is actually made? Kasi
there
sa
was
June
no
19 pa raw
proclamation.
mag-oath taking si Vice President-elect Sara Duterte, di ba? So,
Yeah.
ano yun?
Yung scenario na yon would be true kung hindi mapoproklama yung presidente at vice, no? So kung makansila ang COC at hindi natuloy ang canvassing, no? Walang canvassing na nangyari. So ang daming if. At binigyan due course ng Supreme Court yung petition. So dahil hindi pa siya presidente, pwede pang bigyang due course yung petition, kansilahin yung kanyang COC, and therefore hindi siya kandidato. So ang nag-iisang kandidatong may pinakamataas na bilang ng boto ay yung second placer.
I see.
Pero bago tayo umabot dun sa wishful scenario na yon, ang daming if, no? Ang
Yes.
daming if.
Okay.
Okay.
Alright.
Attorney Buko de la Cruz, sir, maraming salamat for joining us tonight. Ang dami namin nahugot sa inyo.
Maraming salamat din po.
Thank you, Attorney Buko. Ha?
Thank you, sir. Please stay with us. The Chiefs will be right back. Welcome back to the Chiefs here on One News. And now joining us is Mr. Toff Rada, the country manager of TikTok Philippines. Sir, good evening and thank you for joining us and welcome to the Chiefs.
Good evening, Ed.
Good evening, Mr.
Good evening, Ami. Good evening, Lucy. And maraming salamat sa pag-imbita dito sa programa ninyo.
Well, maraming salamat, sir, for joining us tonight. Sir, earlier kasi...
Educate us. Educate me.
I'd be very happy.
Well, sir, earlier kasi
TikTok users.
Yeah. Earlier,
Nagagalit sa TikTok.
sir, as we mentioned a while ago in our introduction, Filipinos spend 4 hours online every day. TikTok now ranks 4th in the list, at least in the Philippines. But we also asked that question kanina. How can digital platforms like TikTok become more accurate sources of information? But I'd like to dial back a little bit there. Are we even asking more from TikTok than what it was designed for? What exactly was the objective of TikTok to begin with? Was it for for the spread of information? Was it for entertainment? Was it for, di ba? I remember kasi nung umpisa, ang dami lang sumasayaw. So I suppose then it was just for entertainment eh. Pero yun nga I'd like to go back to that siguro eh. Are we asking for too much? More than it was designed for?
Sige, Ed. Siguro for context, let me, again, backtrack a little bit and for the benefit of those who don't have TikTok.
Yes, sir.
Allow me to explain a little about the application and the platform itself. Now, TikTok is a short-form video platform, right? You correctly identified that we are primarily an entertainment platform. Diyan sumikat ang TikTok eh. Diyan sa mga dance moves, mga trending memes, no? With very lively background music. Short form dahil ang predominantly ang makikita natin ng mga videos sa TikTok, mga 30 seconds to 1 minute, karamihan. Although recently, nag-expand na rin yung TikTok, may mahanap ka na dyan as long as 5 to 10 minutes. No? So that's the maximum, 10 minutes. But you're right, primarily when you look at the entire universe of TikTok, not just in the Philippines, but globally, it is still primarily an entertainment platform. And that is really the thrust of the company, right? But for purposes of this election, and just going back, zeroing in specifically for the Philippines, we did realize that dahil nga magiging malaking issue ang election, we also undertook several measures. Despite the fact that we are primarily entertainment, we wanted to make sure also that yung mga users of TikTok had access to credible sources of information. So isa sa mga unang ginawa namin, nakipag-partner kami sa Commission on Elections dahil sila yung may mandato based on our constitution na magpatakbo at mag-promulgate ng rules around elections. So gumawa kami ng election hub. No? So kung may TikTok kayo, makikita nyo doon sa banner page, may election hub coordinated with COMELEC. So all of the information there is officially coming from the COMELEC. And it's very simple. It allows you to access information such as who's running, yung precinct finder, kahit na may mga konting glitches, I think by and large, a lot of people still found it useful, mahanap po doon. And also for our OFWs, yung mga kababayan natin sa ibang bansa, it also has very useful information kung paano sila makaboto. And of course, ang TikTok, gumawa din ng COMELEC ng TikTok account nila. So meron din sila mga short videos doon para mas makatulong sa mga kababayan natin to understand the election process. No? May mga partnerships din kami with other media entities. No? And I think to date, all credible media organizations are already on TikTok, including One News. And they have been slowly putting up a presence. And that is another leg of that strategy by which we try to build credible sources of information on the platform para kahit na primarily pumunta ang tao sa TikTok para maaliw, kung gusto nila na makahanap ng credible sources, it's ready and available for them. No? So yun ang siguro, no, yun ang isa sa mga strategies na ginagawa namin to also combat, aside from the fact na tinatanggal talaga namin yung misinformation, no, it's very clear-cut in our community guidelines, which are basically the terms and conditions, no, for people on TikTok. It's very clear, and we have a trust and safety team dedicated na nagtatanggal talaga ng mga content na ganyan.
Well, sabi nila, you played a major role daw sa eleksyon ng ating incoming president. Siguro you can tell us kung sino actually yung mga candidates with the biggest presence on TikTok during the campaign.
Siguro, Ami, salamat. No? I think I'll also put that into context because you recognize this has also been a very emotional election for a lot of the supporters and a lot of the camps. And that is why we recognize that some people have put up maraming mga haka-haka ngayon kung bakit naging ganito ang resulta ng eleksyon. And yung iba nga, binabanggit specifically ang TikTok daw as one of the primary drivers. Pero I would invite everyone to actually look at the data. No? And one of the things na makikita mo sa TikTok, as a matter of fact, there are only 3 verified candidates for president who are on TikTok. One is Mr. Marcos, the other is Vice President Robredo, and the other is Mayor Moreno. And I would invite you, if you have a guess, sino dito sa tatlo ang may pinakamalaking presence sa TikTok, you might be surprised to find out that it's actually Mr. Moreno who has the biggest following on TikTok. He has about 3.4 million followers. And Mr. Marcos himself only doesn't even have half of that. He only has about 1.6 based on the data that I saw. And Vice President Robredo barely has 400,000, right? So if we follow
my question is why? Why? I mean, you would think
Yes.
that because Mr. Marcos, as far as the use of social media is concerned, during the campaign, siya ang pinakamaraming mention, sabihin na lang natin, siya ang pinakalaging nag-trend. So bakit sa TikTok, pumapangalawa lang siya?
I think you look at it several ways, Lucino. First of all, in terms of the content, right? When you look at it, it's really Mr. Moreno has put up a lot of TikTok content on the platform. And like I said, TikTok is primarily an entertainment platform. And if you look at the content of Mr. Moreno, a lot of it is not very serious stuff. A lot of it is also him being very lively, trying to be very entertaining for his followers on TikTok. And that's why I say it goes back to the heart of what the app is all about. It is really primarily an entertainment platform. right? And in terms of the content, I think you can also see that there's a correlation. Mr. Marcos is second in terms of the number of posts they put up, and followed by Vice President Robredo on the platform.
Yes, sir. But the numbers that
So
you
in
gave,
short,
I
it
think,
doesn't-
I think the numbers you gave. But tell me if I'm getting this right or wrong. I think the numbers you gave relate to the number of followers that each candidate has on TikTok. They do not relate to the content that are related to the candidates. In other words, if you have so many influencers or micro-influencers who are on your side, ibang numbers pa po yun versus
Agreed.
yung followers ng mismong kandidato.
Agreed, Ed. And I was just mentioning that as one data point, right? But you did mention the other part of that equation wherein there are a lot of followers, supporters. But again, it goes back to that. Doesn't it stand to follow that if you are a supporter of X candidate, then you would also follow that account to show the amount of support you have for the candidate. And also to go back to the point we made earlier about fake news and misinformation. Now, first of all, I think isa-stress namin na yung problema ng fake news, lahat ng platforms, problema talaga
Yes, sir.
namin yan. No?
Yes, sir.
So talagang lahat kami gumagawa ng aksyon para tanggalin. Sa amin sa TikTok, dalawang methods ang ginagamit namin. We use AI, right? Machine learning to take down patent forms of misinformation. Ginagawa din namin through that trust and safety team, which is human moderation. So 2 legs. Plus, meron ding yung mga users on TikTok, pag nakahanap sila ng fake news and misinformation, they also have an option to report it. Merong ang easy tab doon na specifically election misinformation pwede mong i-identify para madaling ma-identify din ng team namin at matanggal. Bukod pa dyan, meron din kami mga partners, fact-checking partners. We have globally a partnership with the AFP. Kasama na rin dyan ng Pilipinas. We work with this group called internews.org. And we also take in reports from the different media entities. And I think hindi naman nila mapapagkakaila na every time that they send us reports, talagang we take action. No? And we make sure na we properly review. And if warranted, we take down those pieces of content that they report to us.
Well,
Okay,
there's
so may number ng followers, pero meron ding data on, kumbaga sa YouTube, yung views. Di ba, may ganon?
Yes.
Are they consistent, meaning do they match up that if one has X number of followers, laging mas maraming views yung content niya, yung mga
No.
pinopost niya?
No,
Does
I
that
think
follow?
no,
Okay.
it doesn't. I think what we observed, Lucci, is, and this goes to any type of TikTok content, no, that what we observe on TikTok, the ones that go viral, as they call it, are the ones that have really authentic and creative expressions, right? Ang sinasabi nga namin sa TikTok, hindi naman bawal. While we say na TikTok hindi naman yan yung place for very divisive political discussions, we do allow authentic expressions, authentic political expressions. And the ones that get most traction, we noticed, are the ones that are really have a badge of authenticity and creativity. Hindi yung parang mga manufacture na parang sa studio lang shoot, no? Yun ang kaibahan, I think, ng TikTok na kahit meron ka lang cellphone and you were shooting with that, it has potential to go viral if the content is really good.
So it doesn't have to be negative, no? Pwede siyang promotional actually.
As a matter of fact, Ami, yes.
Yes.
The ones that traction the most on TikTok are actually the positive ones, right? We noticed that a lot of the negative content don't really get that much traction. Yun ang na-obserba namin. And it's consistent still with the overall environment and community we see on TikTok. That it's really very engaging, positive. No? May mga colleagues nga ako in other countries who have said that TikTok is the last sunny side of the internet. No? So consistent din yun. So nakikita natin na nagiging popular na mga videos for TikTok in the Philippines.
So sino
Okay, what about...
Sino yung pinaka-sunny campaign dito sa ating mga presidential candidates?
Well, if you take a look at the data, mukhang si Mr. Moreno, based on the number of followers who like and watch his videos. Kaya nga bumabalik ako dun sa thesis na kung sinasabi natin na sa TikTok naglalabanan, baka hindi yata consistent yon doon sa nakikita natin na performance ng mga kandidato, no? And I think I also saw this article na released by check.ph, I think one of the fact-checking firms, and it was, I think, Professor Von Chua from UP Mascom who wrote this. And makikita doon very clearly that the primary driver of this disinformation content, very maliit lang yung nasa TikTok, even at the height, at the spike of supposedly nung study na yon. Kahit tanggalin mo yung TikTok from the equation, hindi doon naglalabanan ng disinformation.
In short, hindi siya as weaponized kumbaga, as the others. I think
Luchi,
essentially that's yeah.
We're at the moment we're this nice, bright, shiny thing that everyone kind of just like points at. But when you look at the data, and that's why I would be I'm happy to explain it tonight, that the data doesn't support it. Unfortunately, for those who are trying to make that connection, the data doesn't match the assertions. No, so I think several pieces of data that I've gone through talagang hindi consistent, and it's also not consistent with what we observe on the platform.
Okay, what about? I wonder if you've observed any correlation between the number of views of posts of candidates and their actual performance as far as the vote was concerned. For example, did you notice that certain senators whose posts were viewed the most actually made it to the Magic 12? I mean, can you actually get data like that from your measures?
Well, actually, to tell you quite frankly, and this goes back to and this is why I can say with a good amount of confidence that it's really not a battleground, because we have very, very few candidates for the Senate who are even on the platform.
Is that right?
Yes, off the top of my head, I can only mention probably about a handful of them. Dean Shell Jokno is one, I think,
yes.
who is on the platform.
Nakakagulat yan, no? Nakakagulat because we were told, at least during the pre-campaign period, na TikTok is where the young will be, and you know the youth population of voters is pretty big, especially the new ones, and that's where they will be. So we imagined at least that the candidates would be using TikTok to the hilt in order to reach the new voters. So hindi ganun ang nangyari. That didn't pan out. Huh?
I think, Luchi, the statement is half correct. While it's true that there are a lot of young users on TikTok, I don't think they necessarily go to TikTok to look for political content. Like I said, that's not the universe of TikTok. So I think one of the mistakes of some political camps is to assume that what works on some platform would also work on TikTok. As a matter of fact, if for regular TikTok users, they know that what works on TikTok is very, very different. There's a very unique community within TikTok, no, that really knows what works and what doesn't, and that's not your traditional yung mga political engagements and very mga serious discussions, no. Hindi ganun ang nagiging patok para doon sa mga nasa TikTok.
What about si Robin Padilla? Kayo daw ang nagpa-number 1 sa kanya, yung paru-paro niyo.
Alam mo, I don't think he even has a presence on TikTok. I think there are people who are I don't think so, to the best of my knowledge.
Yeah, I don't think yung paro-paro gene itself really was viral, di ba? I mean, everybody was doing that except Ed Lingao and Annie and myself.
It's never
gagawa na nga ako.
Ayaw mami ni Ed.
Pero ako, tanong ko, have you gotten over this? Because I remember that there was TikTok years ago and then tumigil, no? And then nag-resurrect. And then there were still issues as far as, China, it being I mean, yung security issues, no? Has that been resolved? Question about whether TikTok is actually a foolproof, leak-proof platform.
Sure. Well, Luchi, siguro just to contextualize it also, no? TikTok globally has been around since 2016, 2017. And in the Philippines, we only really started our operations sometime in 2019, right? So it's relatively new compared to all the other platforms. And with regard to the issue that you mentioned, no, I think you're talking about the issue on data privacy and data security that was an issue in the United States a couple of years ago. I think kung maalala natin, it was raised by a former president who, quite ironically, is the one now who is banned on a lot of the social platforms. But our leadership, has consistently stressed that we will never share data and we won't share any data, even if asked, by any foreign government. And just to share also, there are two places in the world where TikTok keeps its data. One is in the US for US data, for US users, and the other is in Singapore for the rest of the world. And I always tell people, if any of you have tried to talk to the Singaporean government about giving you anything, well, good luck with that, right? So that's also one way by which we try to assure people on TikTok that we are very serious about data security and data privacy, and that is definitely one of the things that our global leadership has expressed several times anywhere where they're asked this question.
But even these fears about privacy did not deter Americans from using TikTok. I think they're one of the most avid users of TikTok as a platform.
They're one of the biggest markets we have actually for TikTok.
But of your mother company is Chinese. Yun ang yun ang sabi ng mga tao that you need to reassure the world that the Chinese government cannot control that company. Can you give that reassurance?
I think to reframe also, I think that's also a bit of a misconception because TikTok itself is a global company. So while the founders are Chinese, so there are Chinese origins, the company itself is not domiciled in China. We do have a subsidiary in China that takes care of the Chinese business operations. And again, this is another misconception that there is TikTok in China. As a matter of fact, I tell everyone, walang TikTok sa China. There is a version of TikTok called Douyin that people in China use, but it is not interoperable with TikTok. Meaning, hindi mo siya pwedeng iswap na kung nasa China ka, dadali mo sa labas, magagamit mo siya, and vice versa. No? So, I think that is also one proof point by which we try to show na talagang hindi yan your data sa TikTok, hindi yan pwedeng basta-basta lang makukuha ng sino man without, say, a lawful cause.
So the data is beyond the reach of Beijing or any other foreign government.
Yes. Although we do, just to stress, we do, kunyari, for cases, say, we do cooperate for, say, yung mga cases forwarded to NICMEC, no, yung mga online sexual exploitation cases. But that needs a proper court warrant, no, yung mga ganitong legal processes. We do cooperate in these markets wherein there is some form of data that to be shared. But I think the fear of people, yung issue na binabanggit about that data privacy and security, I think we've made that assurance. At talagang it is our top priority to make it secure for all our users.
Sir, a while ago you talked about
monetization already on TikTok.
In some of the bigger markets, such as the United States, we already do. Here in the Philippines, there is a limited form of monetization in that there is a TikTok live function, and you can send some gifts, no, that do have a monetary value, but it's not at the same level wherein creators can actually monetize directly from their content.
Wala.
Not yet.
Okay.
The way our creators here in the Philippines actually earn from that is they do gain a substantial amount of following, and then we notice that some of the corporate entities come to them for sponsorship. So I think that's still the model that they apply at present.
Sir, a while ago you talked about how TikTok stops misinformation through AI, through human intervention or moderation. But could you go a little bit more into that? Exactly how are you able to determine whether something is misinformation or simply opinion that maybe, minsan kasi may ganun eh.
Yes.
Is it outright misinformation or is it just wrong opinion?
Yeah, I think that's a very good point you raised, Ed, no, and be very happy to explain. Well, we do define what, hindi lang misinformation, no, we define it as harmful misinformation, particularly the one that causes significant harm to individuals, their community, or to the greater public, right? And this is the type of content that we remove. It's not just limited to election misinformation. It's expanded to all forms of harmful misinformation. No? Having said that, we do try to strike a balance, no, between taking down that form of misinformation, and katulad nga ng binabanggit mo, Ed, we want to make sure then na hindi namin necessarily kinocurtail yung right of users to express legitimate political expression or political opinion. No? So that's the balancing act that we take. So our trust and safety team does study this very, very closely, and we work, like I said, with our fact-checking partners, ang AFP, globally to give us data. Dito nga, may partnerships kami with Internews and some internal agencies also to provide us information. Kung tama ba talaga yung inaccurate yung yung mga posts na tinatanggal namin. Having said that, we also recognize it's not a perfect system. No, from time to time, yung mga pagkakamali talaga, and we do. For us, we continually take steps to improve our system. Kaya nga lahat ng mga partners, sa mga news partners na nakakausap namin, we always ask them, if you have material, if you have data that would point us towards harmful misinformation or election misinformation, please share it with us. And we will. Our promise is we will take action. And we will review, and if warranted, we will take down these posts and take action on the users.
John's France question, yung AFP, hindi armed
Yeah,
forces.
AFP, hindi armed forces of the Philippines. Baka
Yes.
akala nila military controlled kayo or regulated.
Thank you for clarifying, Ami. That's correct.
Yeah.
That's correct.
Yeah. Okay, so outside of elections, though, do you have any programs that promote, I don't know, any kind of information that would increase, let's just say, knowledge, perhaps, or even analysis? Or is that something that that you will actually strive to control or guide on your own, or you just leave it to the users to do it? Or how do you, I wonder if you have programs to enable the use of the platform for information purposes.
That's a great
I mean,
point.
general information, hindi yung mga
Yes.
anik-anik na marites,
Of course.
chismis,
Of course.
Kasi
Lucy.
training yun, Lucy. Yung marites stories.
And I think that's a very good point to raise, Lucy. Sabi ko nga, for this election, we had a two-pronged strategy. Number one is to take down misinformation. Second is also to build credible sources of information. But actually, may pangatlo yan. And we realize this is actually quite important as well, because ultimately, all of us individuals also have that responsibility, as users on any online platform. So ang ginagawa namin sa TikTok, we actually have a Southeast Asian initiative. It's called the Digital Literacy Hub that we've rolled out across Southeast Asia. May kasama pa yung hashtag think before you do. And to date, meron na yung 1 billion views across Southeast Asia. So ang ginagawa namin, it is a digital literacy initiative by which we work with some of the top creators, some of the partners in government and the private sector. And it's a very simple 4-step process that we encourage users to do. We encourage them first to stop, to think, and then before you decide and act. Basically, it's just being mindful about the type of content that you see on the platform, and then think about what benefit would you get if you share this, right? And through this, we hope that we will help build that skill, because we realize this is a skill, critical thinking, that will enable you to, at the very first instance, at least be able to sift through patent forms of misinformation and disinformation. It's our hope. And by doing this, we are able to complement the existing efforts we are doing on platform, the existing partnerships we have off platform. And as individuals, I think that will help us across any platform, hindi lang sa TikTok. That critical thinking skill, parang hindi lang tayo, sabi mo, hindi lang tayo puro mga marites na nagsispread lang.
I know. Yeah, because the level of discourse, but this is the general criticism of social media platforms,
Yes.
that the level of discourse is, very, very shallow, very, very low. So I'm just wondering, lalo na TikTok, when you have only 1 minute or 2 minutes or 5 minutes at most to say your piece,
When was this launched, yung initiative in Southeast Asia?
We launched this sometime in February, first quarter of this year. And this was initially rolled out mostly in Singapore and in Malaysia. I was just in Malaysia last month also, where we had this activity with some of our top creators and also with our government partners. So for the Philippines, we are also aiming to do this sometime June and July. Kasi it's a rolled out activity across all Southeast Asian markets. So talagang naka-schedule din yung Philippines for a June-July rollout.
So wala pa siya pala dito.
Meron na, actually. But if you go to TikTok and you see that hashtag think before you do, meron na kami mga top creators na already are trying through their TikTok videos, already trying to encourage people to think critically and think before you do, essentially. But mas papalawigin pa namin yan through a more comprehensive activation, probably working with some government partners, some academic institutions as well, para mas maging holistic yung pag-explain din namin doon sa mga users on the TikTok platform.
Okay, Mr. Mr. Tofrada, Country Manager of TikTok Philippines. Sir, maraming salamat for joining us tonight.
Maraming salamat din.
Thank
you.
you. Tol.
Ingat
Thank
po.
you.
O, mag-TikTok na kayong dalawa.
Ed,
Nag-iisip na nga ako eh. Nag-iisip
Are you on
na
TikTok,
ako.
Ed?
Kaya nasa TikTok yan.
Hindi, subject ako ng TikTok pero wala ako sa TikTok. May nakikita ko mga video ko sa TikTok kung saan
Favorite ka talaga
binabakbakan ako eh. Thank you, sir. Ingat po.
Maraming salamat. Thank you. Good night.
Thank you
Thank you.
again.
That will be all for this edition of The Chiefs. We hope what was discussed here will keep the conversation going. Before we go, a reminder to our viewers, mask on, wash hands, and stay safe, Philippines. I'm Ed Lingao.
I'm Ami Pamintuan of the Philippine Star.
And I'm Lucy Cruz Valdez, News 5, and we are One News.